Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton could be getting a helping hand from her former aide, Bryan Pagliano, the former staffer who set up her private email server, refusing to testify in a civil case against the State Department by pleading the Fifth Amendment, in spite of the fact he was granted immunity from being charged criminally. Here to weigh in is Doug Burns, former federal prosecutor. Now, Doug, Pagliano was granted immunity. We now know that.
Yes.
We have seen the immunity statement. So how can he claim the Fifth Amendment against prosecution if he's not going to be prosecuted?
You're right. I mean, if you're granted immunity, you're put in the same position as had you asserted the Fifth Amendment. In other words, whatever statements you make cannot be used against you, therefore they can't incriminate you. That's the easy part. Where it gets much trickier, David, is that, let's say I use a quick, classroom hypothetical. Yes, I killed the guy. Okay, they can't use that statement. And by the way, I threw the weapon in the East River at such and such street. They then go recover the weapon. Now, they've obtained evidence against me flowing from what I said, and that starts getting tricky.
All right, but let's stick to Pagliano for a second here,
sure.
Because the question is he not now obstructing justice? Since he has been granted immunity, he can't be prosecuted,
right.
And yet he's claiming the Fifth Amendment to keep his mouth shut. Isn't that obstruction of justice?
No. But when you said he can't be prosecuted, in federal court, you don't have transactional immunity, meaning you can't be prosecuted. What I'm trying to explain, David, is that they can simply be barred from using what you're saying and things that flow from it. So it's a little tricky. Look, there's a motion pending in front of the judge, but at the end of the day, I believe you're right. If you've been given immunity, use and derivative use, what they call it, those are fancy legal terms, you can't use the words that he says.
Here's the problem, Doug. Here's the problem with what he says.
Sure.
He is the guy who set up Hillary Clinton's private server.
Right.
And he claims he can't remember any conversations regarding her private server. Who believes that?
Well, he had gone in and given what we, white-collar lawyers call a proffer, which is basically a tryout to see whether they're going to give you immunity. So ostensibly, David, he must have told them something that's somewhat useful. But you're right. Sometimes both sides of the rooms are. I've been in many, many cases where people are given immunity, and then guess what? They don't even help the investigation.
Specifically to this guy, how are we to believe that he can't remember anything about what he specifically did, set up that private server?
Well,
we just got to leave it at that.
No.
Doug Burns, thank you very much, former federal prosecutor. Always great to have you on, Doug. Thanks.
My pleasure, David.